Hello, this is Gary Marr, Glenelg Community College. The screen capture is for my CIS 150AB students. In the screen capture, I'm going to show some examples of pseudocode and flowchart from Module 3, focusing on structured programming. I've got 2 pseudocode programs and 1 flowchart to review with you, and this should help you with not only the reading, the PowerPoints, but also the assignment. All right, so for starters, I've got some comments on top. Keep in mind that a comment is simply just an English statement of documentation to help the reader understand what's happening and what this is all about. So there's 3 comments there. There's a few more sprinkled throughout to add clarity to my pseudocode. There's my pseudocode start word. And then here I've got all my variables defined with a default value either indicating they're numeric or in this case a string, just letters. This is considered good programming practice. You don't have to do this for a lot of programming languages, but it's considered a good thing to really understand what's happening with your software and your logic if you initialize all the variables to what would be a consistent starting value for them. In this case, it's either going to be zeros or empty. It's kind of leftover from the past. In the good old days when programming languages weren't as sophisticated as they are now, when you declared a variable and it went out and found a piece of memory to store something on, if you didn't set it initially, it would use whatever was there before, which could cause some problems. But if you put this in a program today, it's probably going to look very favorably by the reviewer or the person who's trying to fix your code. This next part of the program has the input and processing section within it. It happens to be a loop. And the way this is going to work is it's going to either ask me for a tool, a quantity, or price, or it's going to just simply drop out of the loop and calculate a grand total. Since the stop code is empty, and since the Boolean expression is looking for a stop code not equal to Q, which means this is true, it's going to enter the loop the first time and ask me for tool, price, and quantity. This will continue to loop until I hit a Q, uppercase Q, which is one of the last prompts at the bottom of this loop. So the first time through, I'm going to basically let it come in and ask me for the information because stop code is empty. It's going to ask me for tool, price, and quantity. I will calculate a extended cost. And then I've got some if processing to do, some structured programming. It's going to say if total is greater than or equal to 100, then take total and multiply it times 98% because there's a 2% discount for purchases over $100. The next section is it's going to check to see what kind of tool I bought. If I bought a hammer, it's going to tell me to be careful, don't hit your thumb. And if I didn't hit a hammer, that's the else branch. It's going to say good, no hammer, they're dangerous. It's then going to accumulate in a grand total, my total. It'll display all this information to the screen. And then it's going to ask me, do you have more products or hit Q to quit? If I hit enter, okay, it's still going to be not Q, so it's going to ask me for the next tool, price, quantity. Or if I hit uppercase Q, it's going to drop out of the loop and simply say, thanks for shopping at Gary's Ace. It is showing the grand total as part of the display up here, so I get a lot of visibility in terms of the transaction, but after I'm done with the last item, it drops out of the loop and then ends with output. I have this same code up here in flowchart format, and I'm not sure if this line by line, you can say put the pseudocode next to it. There's the flowchart code, okay. The only thing this has, the other one didn't have, is it has the start and stop symbol, although, yeah, it's, yes. The only problem there is one little error here. This is the wrong symbol. This should be also home plate, because this is typically what happens with flowcharts. They span more than one page. And when it comes down here to finish off the processing on hammer and display the total, it's going to go back up to the while loop to see if there's more transactions to process. And it looks like you can either use the home plate symbol or you can use a circle. So I've used both here, and they need to be the same. And typically they have a letter in them, either A, B, B, C, C, to indicate, because it could be more than one line that's continued, especially with complex logic. This is one of the problems with flowcharts. It's okay for simple things, but when you start getting very detailed logic with a lot of steps, it gets to be very busy and difficult to draw. But what I want you guys to do, you don't necessarily have to include the pseudocode with your flowcharts, but create a PDF file as output and make sure that's what you submit in your Canvas assignment, because that way I can just look at it. Again, the important thing here is you should have true and false labeled. The lines should be going the right direction. The arrow should be correct. You shouldn't have any lines crossing. There's a slide in the PowerPoint that talks about some of the no-nos that you want to avoid with flowcharts. All right, so I have another example here too, I believe. Let's see. This one is a payroll example. Let's see how this one works. This one doesn't appear to have any while processing in it, but it does have some compound if statements. So this is a payroll example. I didn't do this on the first example, but it's a good idea to do this. Typically what you want to do as comments is put any business rules that pertain to this particular program up top, so that if I'm coming here looking at this program for the first time, I have some idea of what this is trying to accomplish in terms of codes, letters, etc. So it's basically a program that's going to do some, I think, healthcare calculation based on whether a person is full-time, part-time, or contract. My declarations up front. What I did this time, and I'll make this optional, although it's not a bad habit to get into, is not only do you take and indicate your text or string variables with empty parentheses or empty quotes, but you can also label them a string, text, character. This is a number. I can also gather that by the fact that it's a 0. This one also has a constant, and constants typically have uppercase for file names, okay? And a constant can only be set once. It can't be changed. So what I've done here is I've set a constant healthcare field, fee, to be equal to 20 cents, and that's never going to change. That doesn't get updated. It's probably used in calculations, but it's not going to change anywhere in my program because I flagged it as being uppercase. I've also used the keyword const. This actually is a word that comes from the C language, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript. A constant does not exist in Python. Python, we typically use uppercase letters just to give the programmer a hint that this shouldn't change. If you change it, you might mess something else up. More comments. This is basically saying, okay, enter the employee type, F, P, or C. And then it says, if it's not an F, not a P, and not a C, in other words, it's not one of these letters, display invalid input must be P, F, and C. Now, the one thing this does not do is go back and ask the person to key it in again. Now, that's an example that will probably show up in week 4 because that's part of the 4th assignment, which is due week 4 or 5. I'm not sure which, but this will probably get embellished a little bit more, whereas the if statement will still be there, but there'll also be another while block with similar logic that says, okay, if you didn't give me a good value of F, P, or C, then try again and try again. And that same thing would happen down here. This one's simply looking for a yes or a no, but this would also loop if it didn't get a Y or an N. And then finally, this prompt down here is a little bit different. It's asking for salary. That's a number, okay? So it's not letters, it's not yes or no. So basically what I'm saying here is if the salary is less than 0, that should be impossible. You're not working if you're less than 0, you're paying them back. Then you're going to display invalid input, and that would be another situation where you'd ask the person to give you a new value. Here's the processing section. It's a calculation. There's my constant times salary, healthcare cost. Let's see. I'm not sure the logic behind salary times healthcare cost. If this is 20%, it's not 20 cents, that's 20%. So 20% of their salary would be health cost. I made a mistake up here when I said it was 20 cents. That would be 20% of their salary would be their healthcare cost. And then down here is just simply spilling out the information that I calculated to the screen so I could look at it from there. All right, now that's another example of some structured programming. These can be found inside Canvas in the file section for Module 3, I believe. Yes. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.